Aether Revolt Standard has done a lot more than simply change the meta. It's also caused craziness in the Magic economy. In this video, we're going to talk about all the big fluctuations in card prices since the new format took over, some cards you need to keep your eye on, and we'll discuss cards that have completely flown under the radar worthy of pickups as soon as you have the chance. We'll be using TCG player pricing and graphs from MTGstocks.com to show you everything you need to know. So without further ado, let's jump right in. We'll begin with a bit of a history lesson. In case you ever wondered what it looks like when a card in Standard gets banned, this is what it looks like. It looks ugly, an immediate plateau into obscurity. If you need any of the banned Standard cards for other purposes, wait a few weeks for the dust to really settle, then you'll be able to get any of them for practically nothing. I'm actually surprised Emrakul has been able to hold out this long above $10. Sure, it's in some weird vintage decks and I guess frontier strategies, but still, it's holding strong. Anyways, if you need them, you'll be able to get them soon for basically pennies. Enjoy that. Moving into current Standard, this past weekend's SCG Open was a break-open event for Aether Revolt. A multitude of solid strategies came to the forefront, but arguably none more impactful than green-black aggro, a deck we'll be teching at length later this week. Out of that strategy, half the deck has spiked so far, but there's only one card we have to talk about first: Walking Ballista. The jig is up. This upgraded Triskelion is absurd in Standard, not only applying pressure on the ground, but also getting value even when it's removed. In a meta shaping up to be very creature-dependent, the Ballista is a nightmare, easily pinging down creatures left and right. Due to this card's impressive performance this past weekend, the price has gone insane, climbing from $5 and settling around $10, a bit higher actually. Now, the second most expensive card in Aether Revolt, you can expect more and more decks to include the Ballista, solidifying its already proven power and price point. Next to the Ballista, the card to see the most gain out of that deck, Virtuous Gearhulk. After slumbering at an embarrassing $7, the green construct has exploded to a whopping $16 each. That's all it takes when it's a mythic rare. Solid play in the green-black aggro deck as well as other token variants has pushed the Gearhulk to the forefront of counterplay, now guaranteeing inclusion in most strategies. The Gearhulk and Ballista aren't the only cards from green-black aggro to see bumps, however. Even Winding Constrictor, an uncommon, has already doubled in price, now over $1 each and still climbing. Of course, this is a testament to the absolutely bonkers power this card represents, but still, if you need the Constrictor, it's going to cost you real money now. Bummer. Another card that's in this new green-black deck is Rishkar Pima Renegade, but weirdly, it hasn't spiked like the other half of the deck. It is going up, but at a more consistent rate rather than a sudden spike. Around $3 before this past week, settling at $6 seems to be Rishkar's MO. And while this increase in price is expected now that the card has performed, I did expect it to be a little bit higher. I find it interesting that this card of all cards isn't the one that spikes despite its heavy play and clear power level. If you still need Rishkar, I'd consider you lucky he hasn't gone higher. Moving away from Aether Revolt, the newest set wasn't the only one to contain cards that have new life. Thanks to token builds being all the rage, Nissa Voice of Zendikar has skyrocketed back to former glory, more than doubling in price, now sitting healthily above $10 each, and that's with the dual deck printing. Quite impressive if you ask me. She's played in some of the green-black aggro decks and an obvious staple in the new green-white token decks that have come out of the woodwork again to wreak havoc on Standard. If you remember how powerful tokens were last year, this run looks to be quite similar, utilizing Nissa and Gideon alongside powerful new include Rishkar. Nissa is back and she's looking good. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a second Gearhulk making waves. Torrential Gearhulk, once a $20 card, is now a $20 card again. Green-black aggro wasn't the only all-star deck to come out of the weekend. Variants of the Saheeli combo deck are everywhere, and a few versions love Torrential Gearhulk. Not only is it bling-friendly, but in the spell-based versions of the combo deck, it can be a true monster. Proving itself this past weekend by getting into the top 16 in multiple Saheeli decks, Torrential Gearhulk shouldn't leave the limelight anytime soon. Over $20 again? It's unreal. Now that we've mentioned the Saheeli combo deck, we just have to talk about Authority of the Consuls, quickly becoming the go-to answer to Standard Splinter Twin. Not only is this basically an instant win against the combo, but it's so powerful that strategies are putting it in the main deck. That's how much players believe in this card, and it shows. What would normally be completely and total bulk, the Authority has spiked into oblivion, jumping from $1 to $4. As long as Saheeli and the Cat see play, you can bet that the Authority will have above bulk value. I wouldn't expect it to maintain this price for long, but it won't be a 90-cent card for a while, that's for sure. Let's move on to cards you need to keep an eye on, then we'll talk about best pickups right now. Coming into New Standard, Heart of Kiran was all the rage, being hyped up to high heaven, especially after the Copter ban. And while the Heart was played quite extensively this past weekend, it did not garner the spotlight that the previous cards did, dropping the average price of the vehicle to below $20 for the first time in a couple weeks. I expect that it will continue to go down steadily for a little while longer unless someone breaks it into pieces. You can already get copies for $14, so it is falling. What I will say is that if you want a budget alternative to the Heart, or even a legal alternative to the Copter in general, players are looking at Aether Sphere Harvester. No, it isn't as cheap and doesn't perform the same function, but it's a solid vehicle with a pushed crew cost that isn't $14 and is legal and standard. Two things the Heart and Copter are not. Just something to think about if you're looking for alternatives. The Harvester being around $5 already is due to this mindset. It's the high-tier budget option, just keep it in mind. Another card I want to mention is Herald of Anguish. Now this is peculiar. Pre-ordering quite low, as release got closer, the demon jumped above $10 seemingly out of nowhere. The hype around the top-end finisher was quite impressive, and now, after a weekend where the Herald didn't exactly steal the show, it's dropping back down to earth. But players had the right idea. Herald of Anguish is a powerful finisher, and in the right deck, in the right improvised shell, this card could be powerful and expensive. If you're at all interested in that kind of deck, watch this card's financial decline and jump when the time is right. Speaking of improvised shells, we have to talk about New Tezzeret. This isn't the type of card that can come out and stomp release weekend. Clearly, entire archetypes have to be made and tested for Tezzeret to wield his true power, and the same could be said of our demon friend. Tezzeret has been dropping since pre-order, but has slowed down a bit this last week. Players aren't ready to write him off just yet, and I wouldn't be either. Watch the Pro Tour. If Tezzeret doesn't make a splash there, his price will assuredly drop quite a lot, but if he does, if some type of improvised blue-black artifact deck does exist, Tezzeret won't be in the affordable range for long. It's another risk-reward price spot here. Alright, time to talk cards I think are great pickups right now. Let me be very clear. I am not some stock market, Wall Street, MTG fail-nance expert. I can't see into the future. I can't decide what you should do with your money. What I can do, look at past trends and try to help you all save some money in case you want specific cards for your decks. If you're the type of person who buys 30 copies of a card to hoard, this series, not for you. Okay, we'll begin with Chandra Flamecaller. This is the bottoming out of all bottoming out. Chandra's pennies, sitting just above $3 each right now. If you've wanted her at any point up to now, now is literally the perfect time to get her, especially with Amonkhet right around the corner. Nicol Bolas' Grixis. We can expect red to matter a bit more than it does now. It's really difficult to say no to a $3 planeswalker that is actually good. Don't forget she exists. The next card we have to talk about is Spell Queller. Despite Reflector Mage's ban, Blue-White Spirits was still out in full force this past weekend, putting multiple versions into the top 16 of the SCG Standard Classic. And while it obviously doesn't sit at the same power level it did before, the deck is still real, which means that Spell Queller is going to continue to have this back and forth. Look at this recent price trend. This is insanely stable. Players and vendors seem to be in agreement on where the Queller should be. Right now, you can get copies for around $6, and honestly, that's more than fair. Not only is it played in its namesake tribal deck, but it's in Saheeli combo, it's in any blue-white control variant. The card is just good, and will be good for the rest of its time in Standard. I know $6 isn't cheap for a lot of players, but considering the power of the card, it could be a lot worse. Ajani Unyielding, welcome to the dump train. Ajani has dropped faster than any planeswalker I've seen since release in a long time. No one even pretended they had a place for this card. Pre-ordering around $20, the One-Eyed Cat has dumpstered himself to a measly $7 each, and still falling rapidly. This doesn't happen often, so if you want copies of Ajani Unyielding, you can get them right now, this second, not even a week after release, for $7 each. If that isn't hilarious, I don't know what is. The last card I want to talk about here is Sorin Grim Nemesis. Remember this card? Remember when it was $1 million? Yeah, not anymore. In the same way that Chandra dropped, Sorin dropped. Sitting at a measly $5 now, Sorin is a bargain bin planeswalker, and if you want him, you should get him. He is powerful on his own, and there's a decent chance something exists in the next few months that will utilize his power. If you've been waiting to grab your copies, I have no idea what else you could possibly wait for. He isn't going any lower, just no way, get in at the bottom. And that's going to do it for our standard financial recap. Aether Revolt has shaken up the groundwork a bit here. What do you think of everything that's going on? Were you able to pre-order or get some of these key cards before they spiked? I'd love to hear your success stories. It's always good to save money, right? Anyways, be sure to stay tuned the rest of the week for more Aether Revolt standard coverage and a lot more. Hope you enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. Of all the cards we looked at today, there are two I think make the absolute best buys. Chandra, Queller, and Ajani Unyielding. I'm sorry, but I can't say no to a planeswalker that just came out and is already $7. This is just funny. It'll be close to its bottoming out point soon, and I don't want to miss that. Speaking of bottoming out, come on, Chandra Queller is absurdly priced. If you don't get her now, there won't be a better time. This is post-rotation pricing right here. If you want either of these cards, be sure to click the links on the screen. It helps the channel. Win-win. Enjoy.